Good evening, everyone. So now we continue with our series on mock analysis, and now we are going to discuss the latest mock, which was conducted just a few days back. So we are going to look at the current affairs that would include the recent mock. And so as I did in the previous one, I'm going to do the same format, which is that we are going to discuss each of the passages, and after those passages, we are going to do the questions. Although we'll focus more on the questions, less on the passages. So let's start it on that note. The first thing we are going to do is discussing the first passage. So इस वाले mock में जो पहला passage आया था, that was about the G7 summit. G7 is one of the most important summits held any year. So before we dive headlong, I just wanted to mention the countries that are members of the G7. G7, one thing you need to remember is that G7 is a combination of the largest developed countries. So I didn't say the largest countries in the world. I didn't say the most developed countries. Take a Venn of the largest countries, among them the ones that are developed, right? So it's the 7 largest developed economies which are members of this, right? So which are the countries? Obviously, Italy is one of them. Italy was the host this year, as you're all aware. Right, so Italy is the host this year. Japan, USA, UK, France, Canada, and Germany. As you can imagine, these are USA, of course, by far the largest. It's at around 23 trillion. Japan and Germany between 4 and 5 trillion. France and UK between 3 and 4 million, Italy and Canada between 2 and 3 million. These are the trillion, sorry. Why did I say million? US about 23 trillion, Germany and Japan between the 4 to 5 ballpark, France and UK between 3 and 4, and Canada and Italy between 2 and 3. So these are the largest developed countries. Now, organization was set up in the year 1976. Russia did join. There was a time that Russia had joined. So Russia had joined the organization in 1997. There was a feeling that Russia will become a strong economy during this period. Plus, it had adopted capitalism after years of communism. But in 2014, after the first annexation of Crimea, that is when Russia was removed from this grouping, right? So this is a brief background of the G7. Now let's talk about this year's questions. And this year, of course, Italy was the host. Where was it hosted is the first question. We all know it was Italy, but which city in Italy? You must understand it has to be a small town, because generally G7 meets are held in isolated areas, not in big cities. The idea is to interact. It's almost like an informal meeting, almost like a holiday home at a resort. You go to a resort and like 7 of the world's big leaders plus some of the invited big countries like India and others, they come in and we have informal talks apart from formal talks. So Rome, Milan, and Venice. Rome and Milan you can automatically eliminate because they are big cities. Venice it is not. The answer is Fasano. Fasano is a small town in the Apulia province, right? In English it is known as Puglia, and in Italian we call it Apulia, right? There is the city of Bari, which is close by. So if you ever get a topic on the city of Bari, Bari is the capital of Apulia. Apulia is one of the poorer districts of Italy. It is on the eastern coast along the Adriatic Sea, and the role of the mafia is quite strong. The mafia has been strong in this region, like in Sicily, like in Naples. Like in Messina, you've got these bodies like the mafia, the Cosa Nostra, and the Ndrangheta, and the Catanzaro. Similarly, you have these bodies here as well, right? So anyway, let's look at the next question. So what is it that PM Modi is looking at? He's looking at dialogue and diplomacy, obviously, with Ukraine. That is quite logical. Horizon 2047 is something I wanted to talk to you in a bit of detail, right? But let's also look at some of the other topics in this thing before we move ahead. So please understand that France has been probably India's best ally among the Western countries in the recent, if you look at the last couple of years, especially during the time that PM Modi has been the Prime Minister, France and India have shared very cordial relation over a period of time. So that is why it is no surprise. Yeah. The answer is 27th is C. So Indo-France relations are to be improved. That is right on top of the agenda. Why am I saying the relations have been very cordial? Please remember, Mr. Macron, the current president of France, he was the chief guest on 26th of January this year. Similarly, PM Modi was the chief guest during the Bastille Day last year, which is almost like France's National Day. That's when the French Revolution began. Okay, major event. UK and India have been planning an FTA or a free trade agreement. And obviously, the thing that most impeded was the UK general election. Obviously, you cannot have an FTA just before an election. What if the party that finalizes the deal loses the election? And that actually happened. They did not finalize the deal, but they lost the election in a very bad way. I mean, they got absolutely thrashed. The Labour Party won by a very big margin. These are very specific questions. You know, question 29, I do not blame you if you can't know this. Whereas the other questions are a lot about logic and common sense. 29th is something which is very specific. It's 5 trillion yen. The Japanese currency is strong, but it's valued very in the sense that 1 rupee is more than 2 yen. So that way it is the valuation sounds a little high. India and Italy have recently signed. What just happened? Sorry. Yeah, sorry, that's okay. Yeah, India and Italy have recently signed an agreement for this thing. Industrial property rights, right? So this is again industrial property rights about industry. Italy and India have been strong collaborators on various industries. Some of the most well-known fashion brands, for example, come from Italy, like Gucci and Prada, and India is often a workshop for it, you know. So it's like Italian brands, India can be the final producers, right? So that can be one of the ways to look at it. The second passage is about another very significant topic. It is about a person known as Sonam Wangchuk. Sonam Wangchuk is an internationally celebrated social activist and an innovator. In fact, the movie Three Idiots was loosely based on him. You know, the character Phungsuk Wangdu was inspired from Sonam Wangchuk. Sonam Wangchuk has been a supporter of various reforms of the current government of India, but he has also come out, him and his group has come out in protest recently in Ladakh. Ladakh has seen a massive protest, and that also had sort of implications during the Lok Sabha election, where the the election pattern changed a lot this time in Ladakh. I'm talking of specific. So who exactly is Sonam Wangchuk? He's not a Bollywood actor. He's not a lieutenant governor. He's not a politician or from any of that. Definitely not a member of Indian Parliament. He's in fact the founder of SECMOL, which is one of the most innovative schools. In fact, today itself, if you open your Telegram GK group, I have shared an article on SECMOL. So please उस article को पढ़ लेना. SECMOL is about a very innovative school. It's the school that they showed in Three Idiots, where Amir Khan was teaching kids in a very innovative manner. This is what this SECMOL thing was. SECMOL is also about that. More important than that, whenever you're studying something, instead of the individual characters, you need to focus more on the bigger issues, right? So here the bigger issue is the sixth schedule. Now that is something which has a major impact on your overall academics. So what is the sixth schedule we need to understand? So please take a look at question 32. So the answer is A. This is pretty obvious. It is where tribal communities get special rights to control, to organize certain aspects, right? So that is what they're looking for. They are seeking protection of tribal rights. So sixth schedule में क्या होता है? Fifth schedule and sixth schedule, both of them relate to tribal rights, but whereas the fifth schedule gives limited rights, in sixth schedule there are greater rights that tribals enjoy. In the northeast, for example, in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, wherever tribals are in majority, they are dominating an area, as opposed to central India with large tribal populations, but tribals live with non-tribals, whereas in northeast and in Andaman, tribals have been the original inhabitants, in the indigenous people, and not many non-tribals in those states, right? Except recent migrants. So that is where sixth schedule applies. So Ladakh has been asking for that, right? They're asking for a few other things as well. Now the next question is a little historical. I think all of you know Jammu and Kashmir was a princely state that included Ladakh. They joined India after an invasion by Pakistani tribesmen and Pakistani militia, which was ultimately supported by the Pakistani military. And that is when these people sort of joined India, right? So this is B. 26th October 1947 is when Jammu and Kashmir's then king Maharaja Hari Singh, he signed the accession. The accession is when you join a country. Okay, the 21-day fast was for the sixth schedule status of Jammu and Kashmir, of Ladakh. My apologies. Yeah. Right, let's do the last two question. What happened on 5th August 2019? This is very easy, बहुत ही easy question है. It's split into two union territories. One was J&K, the other is Ladakh. What was Article 35A associated with? Again, very easy question. It is about the rights of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. So it is point number B. It is not about new union territories, not about the bifurcation. Bifurcation only happened in 2019, of course. And Autonomous Development Council is something we'll discuss. I was telling you a few other things he's sort of protesting for. I'll tell you about those as well. But yeah, his answer is B. The questions are very easy, but don't go by the question. This topic is much more important than these questions. And you need to understand. So Ladakh basically has two regions. One is Leh, which is predominantly Buddhist majority, and the other is Kargil, which is Muslim dominated. So there is this demand that both of them get a single Lok Sabha seat. As of now, Leh and Kargil, they are a single seat called Ladakh, but now with delimitation probably on the horizon, there is a demand that these two are created as two separate Lok Sabha seats. There is also a demand of local elections. While they do have tribal elections, there is a body called LAHDC, right, which is Ladakh Autonomous Hill Development Council. So LHDC does work. They have two divisions, Kargil and Leh, but there is a demand to have local MLAs as well, because Ladakh used to have 4 MLAs in the erstwhile undivided state of Jammu and Kashmir. So even if you don't have MLA, at least there should be greater local representation for local rights, right? Also, once you get sixth schedule, you can save your region from exploitation by big cities and big companies, right? There is often this feeling that a lot of big enterprises, big industries come and they exploit the local resources. Apparently, that has happened in many parts of the country. So that is where I'm representing what, at this point, I'm saying what the Ladakh protesters are saying. So they want protection of it. We've seen some environmental catastrophes in recent years in hill states, in Uttarakhand, for example. In Joshimath, you saw last year how the roads caved in. We see landslides, in Himachal, in Uttarakhand, in Sikkim, in Arunachal Pradesh. So the idea is to protect against those things. Ladakh has a very sensitive environment. So these protesters, they want to somehow protect that. Right? So yeah, this was pretty much this passage. Let's move on to the next one. And I think many of you could have answered this. I will rate this one as a moderately difficult one. I think it was quite an easy one overall. Now moving on to the next one. The next one is one of the most crucial ones. I will say that this is the multi-dimensional poverty index, which is there. What exactly is a multi-dimensional poverty index? Multi-dimensional is something. So traditionally, when we look at poverty, we look at things like literacy, healthcare, malnutrition, or not having malnutrition, having the right food, etc. But there are multiple factors which can. So multi-dimensional report actually looks into a lot of detailed areas, which is what we are going to discuss today. The three biggest things they're going to discuss is health, education and living standards, as you can see from the first question. इस वाले passage में अगर आप passage पढ़ लो तो थोड़ा अच्छा है. I know a lot of students are often confused which passage to read, which not to read. But here you have a lot of data. Whenever you have data, whenever you have proper nouns, if I go up to the previous ones, for example, if I look at the first one, this is a very short one. इसमें आपको कोई numbers नहीं दिख रहे. इसमें बहुत important लोगों के नाम खास नहीं दिख रहे. Of course, you are getting Giorgia Meloni, PM Modi, Emmanuel Macron, etc. But the questions are not about a lot of them, right? Here, if you see. Similarly, this is a short passage. Whereas if I look at this one, there is a lot of data points जहाँ पे भी है. It is essential that you read it because a lot of the answers you can find from there itself. Okay, so what is multi-dimensional poverty index? So this was of course released by the authorities. So this is B, health, education and living standards. Again, from the question you can make out because the other points are too basic. Now the 38th question, I'm going to give you a hint into how you can answer this. This might sound a bit contrary, but you must think of states where historically poverty rates have been high. Wherever historically poverty rates are high, the chances of, so this is a very very critical word. बहुत ध्यान से इस word को देखिए. Number of people. Percentage कहीं लिखा है, percentage नहीं लिखा. Number of people लिखा. Number of people who have been removed. So absolute numbers will be higher in a state where you have more poor people historically. So even a small change will lead to a lot of people. 5% of people of Bihar or UP, if they are taken out of poverty, will lead to a significant change in overall numbers. We know historically, sadly, UP and Bihar, in spite of being agriculturally very rich states, in spite of that, they have historically been among the poorest, right? So any change in the numbers, it is these two that will benefit the maximum. UP's population is about double of Bihar, I think more than double. So UP is number one. That is obvious. The moment it's given UP is number one, Bihar is likely to be a second because the other three states, Maharashtra historically has been one of India's richer states. So Maharashtra को तो मैं हटा ही सकता हूँ because their absolute numbers are low. आप समझ रहे हो मेरी बात. अगर आज हमें मेजर करना है कंट्रीज में पिछले 20 साल में कहां पे सबसे ज्यादा गरीब लोग गरीबी की रेखा से ऊपर चढ़े हैं, the likely answer has to be India or other developing but highly populated countries. So population and the current development status, these two you'll have to merge. Maharashtra has a large population, larger I think than Bihar. I think it is larger than Bihar, but it is historically one of India's richer states. I'm not saying everyone is rich, but comparatively the number of people below the poverty line will be lower in Maharashtra. So where the base is low, imagine in your mock examination, if you start with 40 out of 120, in your next paper you get 60, it is a 50% increase. Whereas a student who starts at 90 and he gets 100 in the next paper, the percentage rise is very low. So Maharashtra ka rise is likely to be pretty low because it was already at a high base of economic growth. MP and Rajasthan, they were among the poorer states, but then their population is lower. That's because these two states do not have, they are not as agriculturally rich and they're not as densely populated as UP and Bihar, right? So a lot of logic I gave you. I hope I've not confused you more, but the idea is that a lot of questions you'll not be able to answer unless you understand basic logic and common sense. Okay. Which are the bodies that have come up with this thing? Again, it's pretty obvious. It has to be among the developmental organizations. So the answer is C. They are the ones who are looking into development. And what is the number of the percentage of people who have been brought out? Yeah, it's better to be safe than sorry. So occasionally I'm looking at the answers. I hope that is all right. So 17.89, that is the percentage of people who've been brought out. This is an exact number. ये आपको याद करना होगा because in this case it is an important index, right? तो मॉक्स में जो भी पैसेज आता है उसको थोड़ा सा इंटरनलाइज कर लीजिए. इंपॉर्टेंट होगा तभी आपको दिया जा रहा है क्वेश्चन में. ठीक है, चलिए अगला वाला करते हैं. लेट्स मूव ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट पेज. क्वेश्चन 41 and 42. As per this thing, again, this is a bit obvious. Not obvious, I think this is a bit too specific. Nonetheless, I'll just tell you about this one. This is 2030 and this is point number C. 2030 and इसको थोड़ा ऊपर कर लेता हूँ so that it's easier for you to read this. We look at the next question after this. The next question is about space research. So another extremely significant topic in its own right. ठीक है, तो उसको हम इसके जस्ट बाद देखेंगे. Okay, so this is the this is the method. This is a very technical method. इसको बहुत ज़्यादा आपको देखने की अभी ज़रूरत है नहीं. But broadly you can understand it's a common methodology used to identify people. They are actually the aims of the scientists who develop this. You know, like in cricket, you have Duckworth-Lewis system for cricket matches. they are the scientists, so named after a scientist. Okay, SDGs, Sustainable Development Growth. I think everyone knows there are 17 SDGs and they were started in 2015. So India's aim, of course, is a certain figure. Hopefully, we can achieve this, and this is what the body says. By 2030, India can achieve the target of halving the multi-dimensional poverty from the base. So it's not halving from today. So we've already reduced quite a bit. थोड़ा और reduce हो जाएगा, उससे half हो जाएगा by 2030. ठीक है, then let's go on to the next passage. We are done with 3 passages. I've taken about 20 minutes of your time. Let's proceed to the next 2. So passage 4 is super important because Artemis Accords, they are among the most significant ones. Artemis Accords are basically a group of this thing which looks into space research and space exploration. So countries that sign it, at this point there are 43 countries that have signed it. The newest country to sign it has been been the European country of Slovakia, Peru, Slovenia, Lithuania. These have been some of the countries that have recently signed. So it's a total of 43. ठीक है, so वो number please आप लिख लेना. 43 are the current numbers. India is one of them. So India is also a signatory of the Artemis Accords. It started in 2018 with 7 members. This year's target is to land the first woman and the first person of color. Last time humans went to moon, they were all men and they were all white men. The idea is to increase the representation and make it more equitable. So we are going to have a woman and a first person of color this time, right? ठीक है, तो ये आपने देख लिया. मैं इसको डिलीट कर रहा हूं. आगे बढ़ते हैं. तो इसमें भी आपको पूरा पैसेज पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं है क्योंकि ज्यादा डेटा पॉइंट्स नहीं है इसमें. Okay, just to highlight this once again, this is B, and this is this is also B. Moving on to the 45th, significance of India. It is India's commitment to international. Again, quite basic, quite easy question. देखकर बहुत आसानी से आंसर कर पा रहे हैं. डोमिनेट लूनर एक्सप्लोरेशन के लिए हम इंटरनेशनल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन क्यों साइन करेंगे? वो भी जो यूएस ने स्टार्ट किया है. डोमिनेट ही करना है तो हम अपना अलग करेंगे ना, अपने एलाइज लाएंगे. यूएस का एस्टैब्लिश बॉडी क्यों ज्वाइन करेंगे? राइट, इंडिपेंडेंट तो है ही नहीं. इंडिपेंडेंट है, आई एम श्योर, बट दिस इज नॉट अबाउट दैट. वी आर ज्वाइनिंग एन नाउ एग्जिस्टिंग बॉडी and it has nothing to do with China. I mean, that it is against China in a way, but that US is already competing and we have entered that space. That's it, right? It reinforces the original 1967 Outer Space Treaty, the most significant outer space treaty till history. तो इसको बहुत डिटेल में प्लीज पढ़ लीजिए. 1967 Outer Space Treaty. I've in fact shared a couple of articles with you guys today itself, so please refer to those. And the Outer Space Treaty is also significant in the sense that 1967 is a year, if it reminds you, it is right in between the Cold War. It is at the height of the rivalry between the USSR and the USSR, right? So that is where this becomes even more significant. Okay. अगला क्वेश्चन देखो, शायद सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन है इस पैसेज का. Signatories of the Artemis Accords acknowledge their obligation. It is the rescue and return agreement. इस चीज में बहुत प्रॉब्लम होता है क्योंकि कभी हो सकता है one country is able to help another, but because of the lack of agreements, they might not help the other, and people could perish there. Researchers could die in outer space. So the idea is that there should be a proper rescue agreement between countries, also returning them back to Earth. These are a couple of things that need to be looked at. ठीक है, तो ये सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट है. इस क्लॉज को अच्छे से देख लीजिएगा एंड आई विल ऑल्सो डिस्कस फर्दर ऑन इट. एंड आई थिंक द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट नेम दैट इज नाउ कमिंग आउट is Sunita Williams. She's of Indian origin, but at this point she's representing NASA, and she's gone aboard the Boeing Starliner, and that is facing problems. So there are rumors of her being trapped in space. Not exactly trapped, but yeah, ज़्यादा दिन ये चले, so there will be problems. Okay, let's move on finally to the last question. Okay. Yeah, the last question before I do the last passage is about Artemis Accords. Which of the following is emphasized by regarding space operations? Right. So commercial interest, of course, it's important. Military is there, secrecy, but the most important at this point is promoting sustainability. Right. And uska biggest impact is on space debris. This is a word you must pay a lot of attention to because of repeated missions by various countries over the last 60 70 years. There is a lot of debris on space, a lot of dirt, and that a lot of the debris is micro sized, but that can cause enormous accidents in space. So any new missions, debris को वापस साफ करके निकाल के वापस लाना, it is a mammoth, it's a Herculean task now, and that is what many are worried about. That okay, fair enough, we can see keep sending missions, but a lot of them could get destroyed because of existing debris, right? So that is, and don't forget, 2027 is the year when the International Space Station will be retired. That brings its own complications as well. The last passage that we are going to discuss is about one of the most important topics this year and one of my favorite topics, which is the Olympic Games. I think you're all aware the Olympic Games are due this year. So anything to do with the Olympics do become important. And Olympics, you need to know the history of it as well. You need to know when was the first modern Olympics, which country has hosted the Olympics maximum number of times. How many times has Paris hosted? This year they're hosting. How many times have they hosted earlier? What is the mascot of this year's Olympics? These are a couple of trending topics that you have to look into at a very serious level, right? So only the second, this one is about the Olympics, and yeah. So only the second Indian to win an individual gold medal. Very easy question, and I've discussed this many times in class. I often start my GK classes with miscellaneous topic, and I keep telling you guys, India has won a total of 10 gold medals in history, 8 of them in hockey. The first Indian individual gold medalist was Abhinav Bindra, but the second one was Neeraj Chopra. This actually took place in 2021, but we'll call it 2020 because of COVID. It got delayed, but it was actually 2020. He won it for javelin throw, which is part of athletics. The second question is about the first medal in 2020. Sakshi Malik didn't win last time. She won it the Olympic before that. I don't think Vinesh Pogart or Kavita Dalal have as yet won an Olympic medal. Mirabai Chanu, she was the first winner last year at last time, remember? So the question here is about last time's Olympics because it's the latest one. So you have to go through that as well. And don't forget, 2020 was a remarkable Olympics. It's only 3 years back, so it's not 4 years back, 3 years back. 2020 is particularly remarkable because for India, it was the most successful Olympics ever. We won a record 7 medals. We had never won 7. We had won 6 in 2012. We won 4 in 2008. 2016 was bad, just 2. But 2020 was remarkable. We won 7 medals. We lost the bronze medal by a whisker in 2 events. In golf, Aditya Ashok missed by 1/100th of an inch. Can you imagine that? I can't even think of a figure that low. The women's hockey team lost the bronze medal match. So otherwise it could have been 9. I'm 100% sure this time we are going to crack the double digit. So hopefully a few months on, I'm going to say 10 in 2024. But as of now, since we don't have 24, last one is important. So 7 last time. And Mirabai Chanu was the first. She's a weightlifter. So वो sport भी लिख लेता हूँ मैं आप लोगों के लिए. Weightlifting. That's the sport she's from. She's from Manipur, right? Neeraj Chopra from Haryana. Okay, who among the following became the first Indian woman and the second Indian athlete after Sushil Kumar to win 2 Olympic medals? Sushil Kumar's won medal in wrestling twice. The first woman to win it twice is PV Sindhu. I think everyone knows she's from badminton. So she won a silver in 2016 in Rio de Janeiro, and 2020 she won a bronze in Tokyo. So yeah, she's won it twice. Hopefully many more names can be added to that list this time. Right? So Olympics ka अच्छे से देख लीजिए. Also Paralympics. And there is a topic mentioned here about Russian or Belarusian. It is absolutely unrelated to the questions. Right? So that's what I want to tell you. A lot of the passages have no connection with the questions. But they're there, right? And उसमें एक hint है. तो please ये वाला topic बहुत easily seriously आपको पढ़ना है. Russia and Belarus. Belarus is Russia's closest ally. Both these countries, they are banned from this year's Olympics because of the invasion on Ukraine. So their athletes cannot participate, but their individual athletes can. provided they have no connection with the Russian military or the Russian, establishment, political establishment. So it's like team sports like football, basketball, hockey, water polo, they can't participate, right? But individual sports like gymnastics, lawn tennis, boxing, wrestling, they can, provided the candidate is clean, does not have a record of collaboration with the Putin government or with the Russian military or the alleged atrocities on Ukraine, right? So that is how it is. If a Russian or a Belarusian wins a medal this time in any individual event, then it is not the Russian flag that is going to fly, not the Russian anthem that will be played or the Belarusian. It will be the Olympic, rigged symbol that will be shown, right? So that is the thing about this thing, right? I hope all of you learned from this, and I'll be doing many more mock analysis after this. Thank you so much, everyone, and see you guys very soon. Thank you.